Let's see. I think that will update. How's everybody this morning? It is 11 o'clock right on the dot, and we don't have a black screen to start. That's something to celebrate. We are live streaming without issue from Zoom. So that's something else to celebrate, right? So this morning we are talking about cultivating or building a success mindset, attitude of success. And we know one of the things is really making sure we reinforce those wins. So for those that are new to the group, welcome. Every Tuesday morning, I go live at 11 a.m. Eastern. So now, unless it's a holiday, then we obviously don't. But we normally talk about different topics: leadership, branding, marketing, social media, mindset, leadership skills, you name it, kind of whatever the group seems to be talking about over the last 3 to 4 weeks. I kind of pick a topic and use that as a guide for what we want to do some training around. And mindset is something that I don't really care how big of a success you are. It's something that you will always work on, because there will always be the creeping in of self-doubt, of concern. Your confidence will get shaken over certain situations. So really working on our mindset and addressing it regularly helps us long-term, right? So we're going to talk about what it means to reframe, how to stay motivated, and about setting those goals, right? We're talking about being resilient. And resilience comes from being able to persevere and move through things that are either an obstacle for us or a challenge. And I'm Karen. For those that are new, I'm your host. I have been doing these weekly live streams a year June, so 13 months now. And if there are any topics you're looking for, shoot me a message and let me know, or jump up into the guides at the top of the Facebook group. And there's a list of different trainings that we've done. I've kind of sorted them, and you can watch the replays. And if you have questions, if you comment on any of the replays and I don't respond, within a reasonable time period, like within, by the end of the day, or good morning, Maria, or the next day, make sure you shoot me a message to make sure that I can see your comment, because sometimes those older trainings, I will get a notification and I won't. It's not always consistent. So please know all your comments and feedback are important. So if I'm not responding, please reach out and let me know, because it means I haven't been notified. Okay. Perfect. So this morning, success mindset. So when we hear that, what does it mean to you guys? And this is interactive. So if you're watching and you have the capability of making comments, I will read them. So what you're going to see me kind of do is I kind of swivel my head back and forth depending upon which side I'm looking at. And so for the comments, sometimes I'll pause because I'll be reading the comments, but I will read them out to everybody. So when we're thinking success mindset, what does that mean to you? What does success mean to you? Because, Webster will tell us it's one thing, but to each of us, success can be something different. It can feel different. It can look different. So what does success mean to you? And that's a really great place to start, especially when you want to build a success mindset. You have to know what it means first, right? So knowing that success is achieving something, coming out further than you were before, overcoming an obstacle or a challenge, reframing our doubts into statements of confidence is another. So, and it can be different depending upon the different situations we're in. So we're going to start by looking at what is reframing, because you hear it all the time. We want to reframe that statement. We want to hit the pause button on that negative self-talk and reframe it. So what does reframe mean? We're going to talk about identifying your limiting beliefs. What is a growth mindset? And visualization. That all kind of plays into the reframe. So identifying your limiting beliefs. What's one thing that, or one experience or one situation that you are, let's say, not afraid of, but it causes you apprehension, or it creates a moment of doubt, or your palms get sweaty, or your breath gets, you catch your breath before you do something. What is a situation like that when it comes to your business? Because this is what we're talking about, right? Like building a mindset of success within our business, because it will obviously flow over into our personal lives, but we really want to focus on the business element. So what is the one thing? So to share, for me, going back 13 months is part of one of the reasons I brought it up in the beginning. Was for me, going and doing a live stream, it was terrifying. So success meant for me that I did it. I went live. And my goal was just to go live once. And then my business coach challenged me to do it every week. And he was like, be consistent of the day, the time, and your goal, set a goal, right? And we'll talk about realistic goals, right? Smart goals. What's your goal? So for me, I was like, oh, I can't do it. Like, my limiting belief is I cannot get in front of a camera, and I cannot talk to people that I don't know about what I know. And that seems really ironic, but it was a fear of mine. And I would be like shaky and nervous. And then I did it. And I was like, okay, that wasn't bad. Nobody showed up. Nobody was there. So I was talking to myself. But I celebrated it because it was this, I kept telling myself I couldn't do it, or I would find excuses not to do it, right? Like, oh, I need to have people to register. Oh, I need to have this in place. I need to be able to do that before I can go and do a live training. Right? So, because why? My fear was taking over. My fear was telling me, right? And fear is, like, you think of it as an acronym: false expectations appearing real. So when you think of it, you break it down like that. So my fear was, if I didn't have at least, 20 people watching, then it wasn't going to be a successful training. Nobody would get anything out of it, right? Like, I had these unrealistic expectations of myself for it to be a failure. So I would just not do it. So for me, identifying that limiting belief, that what I wanted wasn't necessarily what I needed. So Maria says, success to her is about internally validating that I made it despite the doubts of others or my own disbelief. That's great, right? Because it's that doubt, and it's the disbelief we have in ourselves. So confidence, and building that confidence, it's like a muscle, right? We have to keep challenging it to make it grow stronger. So my challenge was, then I had to go live every week, and I was terrified, because what was I going to talk about? What was I going to teach people? What did I have? Did I have that much knowledge that I could go live every week and teach somebody something? And then that was right. So going back to what Maria's saying about the doubt, I let go of the doubt because I realized you as a group were giving me the topics to talk about. So I could talk and teach and create a space for all of you to come together and ask questions. And together we can work through. And it became this collaborative approach, which is great because I get to interact with you, even though right now it's one-sided, right? But I'm reading your comments. So I was able to overwrite and reframe that limiting belief from I can't to I can, I am, and I'm doing, right? So Maria, an example, and anybody else who's watching, drop an example. What's the one belief that you were able to rewrite for yourself to overcome a challenge? So for me, it was that I've overcome challenges before, bigger than standing here. I've done presentations in person. Why is it any different? So I came up with more reasons to go live than excuses for not going live. And I tell my clients and my kids that as well, right? You can either have an excuse to not to do something, or you can have a reason to do it. And more times than not, the reasons are way more fun than the excuses, right? So can you repeat that question? What is the one limiting belief that you were able to overwrite? So when we're talking that internal validation, your doubt or disbelief, was there a limiting belief that you've been able to identify that you could reframe, that you could restate from a negative to a positive? And sometimes these questions, like it'll be like near the end of the live training and people will be like, oh, I just found my question, right? Because sometimes we have to think it through. And part of that is, again, our fear is being vulnerable and sharing in a place where other people are going to hear our concerns, hear our lack of confidence, right? So, and this is one of my goals with this live training, is it to be a safe space, right? For you guys to share and be vulnerable. Because that's how we learn, and we learn from each other. Like I may be just like a talking head right now, but we're all learning, right? So Maria's saying that I wasn't worth it and that I was never going to amount to anything. Like that hits you right in the heart center, right? Like that hits you in the feels, as they say. So now what was your reframe for that? Or have you been able to come up with a reframe? Have you been able to work through that statement and restate it to a statement of confidence? Right? Because doubt is our number one killer of confidence. And so when we know what our doubt is, right? So her doubt is, I'm not worth it. We want to come up with reasons that it is not true and that the truth is the truth. And then you restate it as a statement of confidence. So when we're reframing, we're also looking at our growth mindset, right? So what's the difference between having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset? So using Maria's as an example, her fixed mindset is, I wasn't worth it. I'm not worth it. I'm never going to amount to anything. That's a fixed mindset. That is stating a belief and having zero opportunity to change your mind. This is the way it is, and that's just it. There's no changing it. That's your fixed mindset. So you want to be looking at, how do you overcome and create a growth mindset? And that's really kind of diving in and challenging that belief and then restating it to embrace a growth mindset with that. So Susan's saying one of her limiting beliefs is that only my friends would purchase my jewelry. They have been very supportive of me, but I was starting to think that they would purchase out of obligation. As I've started to have sales from strangers, this belief has started to fade. So, right, so the limiting belief is her jewelry is not going to be good enough for people who don't know her, who don't have an emotional attachment to her, to purchase her jewelry, that they don't stand on their own as quality products, as gorgeous pieces of jewelry that people will want to wear. So now, right, so when we're looking now, that was a fixed mindset. So now she's shifting it to saying that belief has started to fade. So Susan, have you worked through the reframing of that statement that, yes, people are going to buy for emotional reasons, but not because they are emotionally attached to you, because the emotional piece with the jewelry invokes that emotion that they want. They see that piece of jewelry with them, right? So there's an emotional attachment to the jewelry piece, not an emotional attachment to you. So Maria says she went through therapy and learned how to reframe my own thoughts and relearn it by giving myself permission to embrace who I am and to learn how to love myself again. Huge, congratulations. So therapy is amazing, especially if you get paired up with the right therapist, And sometimes we have to go through 2 or 3 different therapists before we find the right one. Give yourself permission to, if you do seek out the support of a therapist, that if after the first couple of sessions you're not feeling it, like you just, like that wall is not moving, because when you seek out another one until you are comfortable, because there's so many out there and there's amazing therapists. When you find the right one, it's life-changing. So yes, Maria says, I understand this as well. I still feel this way at times. And I think most of us as small business owners, Susan, Maria, feel what you're saying and what you're sharing, right? Like we feel like our services or our business or our products, we're really only selling to our family and friends. And to go beyond that means we have value, right? So that's great, Susan. So now I'm going to wait to see if Susan responds, if she's been able to kind of flip her doubt into a statement of confidence. And then if she does, I'll read it for everybody, right? So part of this technique of reframing, yes, right? So Maria's saying giving myself permission was a huge deal and a game changer. We give everybody else permission, but we never give ourselves permission. So we need to give ourselves permission for sure. So the visualization piece is part of that permission, right? So as we are working through this limiting belief, this doubt, the confidence shaker, is we have to visualize the positive, visualize the opposite. And this is part of the reframe. So when we're visualizing, it's more than just, kind of that meditative, like I'm going to kind of close my eyes and get still, and I'm going to visualize the success of my business. I'm going to visualize my piece of jewelry on every single person in my town, or I'm going to visualize that I have 25 people in every single workshop that I'm hosting, right? It goes beyond that. It's not just the mental visual, it's all your 5 senses need to get involved. What does that sound like? So when you guys think of your business kind of growing, so if it's normally, let's say you do 10 sales a month, Susan, but you grow to 25 sales, or Maria, you have 1 or 2 people enrolling in your language courses and now you have 25. What does that sound like? Right? Because there will be that audio sense. What does that sound like? It's busier, it's louder. The papers are rustling. What does the touch, that sensation feel like when you hit that growth, that goal? Right? You're touching more paper, you're packaging up more jewelry. So there's that physical sensation. Is there a taste? Is there a smell that goes along with it? All of a sudden now your room is overwhelmed with the smell of newly photocopied paper, right? We know there's that smell. It's not the same smell as when we were kids, with the cranked style copier machine, right? With the alcohol, but there's that scent of newly printed papers. There's going to be a scent to the jewelry when you're making the jewelry, a lot more jewelry. So when you start to visualize what this success is, make sure you're doing the whole body. You're doing all your 5 senses. Yeah, so Maria says it feel amazing and terrifying all at the same time. Yes. Yeah. But a good terrifying, right? Like you kind of get sweaty. You're going, okay, I need to wear black because I'm going to sweat through my shirt. And I hope everybody see, right? It's going to be things like that. Like I'm going to be super nervous. But it's okay because I know I can push through. I've done it before, right? So when we're looking at reframing and creating this growth mindset, bring in all 5 senses. And you'd be amazed that when you kind of focus and you're looking at me going, seriously, taste, Karen? Like, what am I going to taste? Well, maybe you're going to drink a lot more coffee, or maybe you're going to have certain foods, snacks at your workshops that you're going to offer, right? And that's going to remind you of the success piece, the growth piece, that the confidence, I can be doing this. And you reframed it because there's that triggering. So Susan says, so part of her reframing is to really listen to comments potential customers make, the compliments. I love it. I know I'm not going to change someone who's not a jewelry wearer to all of a sudden becoming one. Let's see. They are not my target customer, the jewelry wearers, and by focusing on their compliments, that drives me to continue to create. Awesome. I love it. Yes, I'll be drinking more coffee for sure, Maria says, right? So I love it, Susan. That's a great reframe, right? So the compliments. And somebody had shared with me, this is a long time ago, one of the things they do is they keep a notebook, and whether it be they find the compliment or the comment on social media, or if somebody's emailed it to them, and they paste it inside their book. And when they're feeling doubtful and they're kind of unsure of themselves, they get that book out and they start reading through all of the compliments, all the testimonials, and it's all in one place. And they say it's amazing for them to go from feeling super doubtful and unsure of themselves to, by the time they've read through all of it, whether it only be 2 or 3 or 20, that they're feeling so much better because now they're going, right, I've made this impact, right? So when we're talking about that visualization, part of that can be reading those compliments and visualizing them to continue, to keep coming in, right? So that's the first thing, right? Reframing. To be able to create and cultivate the success mindset, we have to be able to identify what's holding us back. And it's not always easy. And as a coach, it's one of my, I have 14 new comments. Look at that. So, right, it's stopping for some reason. I don't know why. Right. So it's reframing, identifying the limiting beliefs. And it's kind of what's part of my job is to help my clients uncover what is that limiting belief, because sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees, right? And really embracing that growth mindset and understanding when we're having a fixed mindset and when we have a growth mindset, and how to move from one to the other, right? And then really embracing those 5 senses when we're visualizing. So yes, so the book idea is great. I've not done it myself. I need to do it because it is a great idea. Not my idea. And yeah, and so Maria's saying she's still learning what's holding her back in certain areas. And it's okay, because that's part of growth, right? We don't know what we don't know. And that's part of what the next thing we're going to talk about is, how do we stay motivated? We have to understand what our triggers are. And that's the first one. We need to know what's triggering us. What is triggering that limiting belief? Sorry, that was my son upstairs dropped something. So it is, you're going to want to know, what is the trigger? What's keeping me to holding back versus moving forward? And so if we use that compliment book as our idea, if we're feeling stuck and we don't know why, and I want to give you permission to know it's okay that you don't know what the limiting belief is, right? But if you know you're kind of standing there in your office or your workspace and you're going, I'm kind of feeling paralyzed. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do next. It means you're being triggered by something. Your lack of action means there's a trigger that's happening. And it's okay if you go, well, what's triggering me? And you don't have an answer. Right? So, and that's where possibly the book or having a book of quotes can give you that inspiration, right? Because then it's okay, so I've done it before. These people have really liked my work. They've really, thought they learned a lot through me. Oh, and look what this person is, this success quote, right? So knowing what your trigger is. And sometimes it may not be the internal trigger. It may not be a limiting belief. It may be an external trigger, right? Yeah, so I'm reading Maria's comment about the journal she created. Yeah, I mean, it's a journal, right? So you're journaling yourself. So a journal is normally, right? The normal quote quote is you're journaling your own personal thoughts, right? And you're kind of doing brain dumps and you're journaling. And that's where through that kind of brain dumping, you come back and you can actually start to uncover limiting beliefs, right? Where the book idea is, it's concrete evidence of you making a positive impact on other people. And then that reading that concrete evidence reinforces your confidence and builds your confidence. So I think it's slightly different, but if you only used it for positive things, right? So I don't know about you, but when I journal, it's not always positive. It's not, we don't always having that, aha moment. So, right? Okay, so triggering internal versus externally. We need to understand that sometimes there's an external trigger that stops us in our tracks. So I'll use like an example. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago when the power went out? I was ready to do the live stream and the power went out. So guess what happened? Like everything stopped. So the external trigger for me having doubt had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the power going out and me kind of figuring out how flexible am I and relocating everything to outside where it was crazy enough sunny out. So we weren't sure why we lost power as a subdivision, like thousands of people lost power, right? So the external trigger was, can I overcome this? So my doubt was, am I flexible enough in my mindset that I can immediately like adapt to my situation and still follow through and keep my commitment of going live? So external trigger, right? So sometimes you want to make sure that if it's an external trigger, you don't internalize it and allow it to become an internal trigger. So resilient strategies, because that's part of this, right? So using that example from last week with the power, the fact that I had to be resilient and follow through. What was my strategy? I had to really think outside the box. I had to let go of, this is how I normally do things, to it went all out the window and literally we went outside, right? And then the irony of it all is the power came back on like 5 minutes before 11 o'clock at 10:55. So I had to come back inside. Anyway, so, right, so you want to think of, what are your strategies to handle the challenges and obstacles? And setbacks are normal. They are going to happen. We are not in this isolated situation where what we're experiencing has never been experienced before. So our resilience comes from understanding that not achieving a goal, having a setback, is normal, right? 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's normal. And you all see the meme, right? It's, the squiggly line of success is never linear. So it's, how can you anticipate a setback? And what are your strategies associated with potential setbacks? So we can, rewind 4.5 years ago when COVID hit. That threw a crux in everybody's life. And those that had strategies and the tools to be resilient were able to adapt their businesses and survived through that period, right? Not everybody was as fortunate. So like the big companies poured tons of money in to the resilient strategies. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. So we have to normalize, what does it look like when we incur a setback? So if we use Susan as an example, because she's a product-based business, a setback might be where she has a big wedding order where she's doing the bridal jewelry, and there's a delay in her receiving product that she has to use to make like her jewelry. What is her strategy? So like, what would she do in that instance if there was that setback for her? And this is where you play devil's advocate, and whether you have a business coach that you do it with, or you have a business BFF, or a group like ours where you can come on and say, this is my situation. Can somebody help me? Anybody have any ideas? Because you'd be surprised what other people in the group might be able to say. Oh, I used to make jewelry and I don't anymore, but I have like a ton of that. Like I can ship it, So it's about, what are your strategies to overcome any potential setbacks? So plan A, plan B, plan C kind of thing, right? So resilience is a muscle that we don't want to have to exercise, but we need to exercise. It's like having insurance. So when I was heading up to Hamilton, when my father was passing, I had made a plan for my son to stay because of school and hockey. So I put a plan in place for him, for my husband, and had it all worked out. He was staying with friends downstate. And then 2 days later, their son got COVID. So my plan B went into place. And then my plan B came back and said that their child had COVID, because guess what? They were all on the hockey team. So then I'd go to plan C, plan D. I had all these backup people in place. And the final result was my husband had to work from home. But the resilience was, what are my strategies? What are the worst case scenarios when you're experiencing a challenge and having to overcome it? Right? So thinking about your business, what are some of the worst case scenarios? And people go, I don't want to think about them. You need to think about them. You need to think about, how are you going to overcome them? How are you going to address them? Right? It doesn't mean you have to live there. Remember, when we are looking at coming up with strategies to be resilient so we can stay motivated and in action, you don't live where the worst challenge might be. You visit it, you gain knowledge, and you get the heck out of Dodge. Right? So, and resilience and staying motivated also has to do, right? When we talk this holistic approach, I'm always asking my clients, not only about their business, but what are they doing for themselves? What are their physical habits? Are they exercising? Are they walking? Are they working out? Are they taking classes? Are they moving their bodies regularly? Are they looking from a mental perspective? Are they taking classes to expand their knowledge base? Are they doing something socially for themselves? Are they honoring themselves spiritually? To be resilient and to really have this mindset of success, we have to incorporate our mind, body, and spirit in everything we do. And if we are not honoring the physical and the spiritual side of ourselves, our mental side, our mindset, we will come up against roadblocks after roadblocks after roadblocks. Right? So it goes back to when we talk about reframing the visualization. Sometimes you're doing that when you are visualizing, you're being physically active. Like I know when I'm on the treadmill, my mind is doing visualization about things I'm working on. right? So that helps for me, it helps ground the vision physically in my body. So when I'm actually sitting down to work, there's that muscle memory and I can recall it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I remember that now, right? So healthy habits, eating healthy, making sure you're getting enough sleep. That's the number one thing. If you're not sleeping enough, your body can't rest, your mind can't quiet. And therefore it can't be 100% the next day when you're trying to do your best work. Or you're not going to be 100% when a challenge rises up, right? So does that make sense about knowing your internal and external triggers when you want to stay motivated and what might be holding you back? What resilient strategies you need to have in place and having those healthy habits. So far, the two of the three things that we want to talk about today all include the whole body, the whole you. I'm not sure if you guys recognize that or not. It's important. Your whole you is important. Okay. So the last one is setting goals. And we talk about goal setting quite a bit. We talk about SMART goals, and you guys know that acronym, right? So yeah, so Maria says, I tend to overthink things, especially when it comes to the worst case scenarios. I still need to find a healthy habit for this. Yes. So, and that's where journaling might come in, where when you're overthinking, you just start journaling it out and you get it out of your head and on paper, and then you forget about it. So one of the little techniques that I've worked with a few clients on is they have just paper, like, the tear out journals, and like the lined paper, the spiral bound, the school lined paper, I think they're called, I'm not quite sure, and I have them just write out 2 or 3 pages. Like it's literally just a brain dump on everything that's overwhelming them. That's not good for them, that they think, right? And they just brain dump 3 pages, and then they find a safe space and they burn it, right? And it's kind of like this letting go, whatever that was, they've written it and they burnt it and they let it go. Because sometimes that journaling, that mind dumping is not really for you to reread. It's an escape, getting the thoughts out so you can stop overthinking about them because you've addressed them, right? So actually, Maria, something you can think about doing is clock base. And this is something that my husband and I, when we were dating, we started doing. And because we worked for 2 different companies, but they were in a joint development. So we would set a clock for 5 minutes. One of us would start, and we would just be crabby for 5 minutes and bitch and complain about what was going on at work for us. Right. So I would go and I would spend 5 minutes, and I would just get it all out. And then my timer was up, and then he would go and he'd spend his 5 minutes. And then when that 10 minutes was done and we each kind of said our piece, then we wouldn't talk about work again. So we kind of gave our negative Nellies the 5-minute clock. And I may have mentioned this in the past in another training, right? So mine, I call her negative Nellie. So I give her 5 minutes and she can say whatever she wants to say. And then she's done. So Maria, for your overthinking, put a time frame on the clock. It doesn't, you can set the time. It can be 1 or 2 minutes. It can be 5, doesn't matter, but can't be more than 5 minutes. You don't want to give her too much time. And you want to say everything that you're overthinking. What are all my worst case scenarios, right? Because that's your fear talking, and then cut it off and then start to reframe into positive statements of confidence, everything that you just said for worst case scenario. So, and that's part of, right? We're setting SMART goals. We have to have an action plan. So overthinking, self-doubt, right? That becomes an action plan. How do I overcome it? What are my resilience strategies? My action plan to set my goals are step 1, 2, 3, 4. What are my resources? What are the tasks I need to do? What's my schedule like? Okay. So with your goals, having goals is great, but if you don't have an action plan to go with them, then guess what? You can't reinforce that success mindset because you don't know when you've been successful. So we can set up a goal that Susan's going to sell 100 pieces of jewelry in the month of July, but if she doesn't have an action plan, how does she know when she's successful? Because you want to celebrate every step of the way. You want to celebrate when you've sold 10, when you've sold 15, when you've sold 20, right? You want to celebrate when you received all the product in to be able to make all the jewelry. Maria wants to celebrate when she gets the registration page set up for people to register online for her workshops. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there, Maria. I don't know if that's true or not. Right? So I'm just ad hocing here. So, right. So she wants to celebrate when she finalizes the workbook for them, because all of these are mindful mind steps you're taking with your action plan towards your goal. And by celebrating, you're reinforcing the success piece. Okay. Every win is a win worth celebrating. And the third part about when we're setting goals is, we will go with that, yeah. The accountability, right? How are we being held accountable? So as a business coach, it's another part of my job, right? Is holding my clients accountable. So setting these goals, creating an action plan, and then holding them accountable. So who is your accountability partner? The group certainly can be an accountability partner, right? Where you can say, I want to set this goal and I want to achieve it by this date. And I'm going to keep posting all of my successes, because then guess what? Now you have this collective of women celebrating your success every time you achieve something, right? So accountability is really important. Are you going to meet with the person? Are you going to just have telephone check-ins? What does that look like from an accountability perspective? What do you need for that accountability person to be truly a partner? So, so who has, my son just sent me, okay, he's leaving home. Sorry, parenting has to happen once in a while. Let's see, can I remove that? Perfect. So Maria doesn't have an accountability partner. So think about, what does that look like? So for a lot of people, it is working with a coach. It is finding that mentor. The group, Maria, lean into the group and, ask if anybody wants to be an accountability partner and lay out, what does that look like? Because you can be an accountability partner to each other, right? So, because I know at one time you were working with somebody. If you're still working with them, ask them to be your accountability partner. But definitely lean into the group. And that goes for all of you, right? It's that's part of the support piece, right? When we're looking at solutions, support is one of the key solutions we need as small business owners. And it's also why I created, the Village platform and the Women's Business Resource Community, because support is critical. So that's a lot. We covered a lot today. So success mindset. We're cultivating a success mindset through reframing, staying motivated, setting goals. With the reframing, we covered the identifying your limiting beliefs, your growth mindset versus fixed mindset, visualization, all 5 senses. Stay motivated, understanding internal versus external triggers, right? Understanding what our resilient strategies are and what our healthy habits are and how we can integrate healthy habits in the mind, body, spirit. What does that look like for you? Setting smart goals. What is your action plan and who is your accountability partner? Oh, I have some things to think about myself. So questions. We're down to the last few minutes. Any questions you guys have? Okay. So no questions. Then that's a lot to think about. Lean into the group. Yes. So yeah, motivation can be, you're going to need to really get cues about what motivates you and set up rewards. That's something else. Like when we're talking accountability and we're talking about staying motivated, what are your rewards? So when you reach a certain milestone, when you achieve a certain step in your business, what's your goal? What's your reward for doing that? Reward yourself, right? So, because if we go back to those five senses, if you're saying one of my rewards is I'm going to treat myself to XYZ, and you achieve it and you follow through, guess what? That visualization comes to reality because now all five senses are involved because you've rewarded yourself. So make sure you understand what those motivating triggers are for you. What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning and going? Right? Um, okay. So we are putting a pause on the lunch and learns for July and August. Yes, right, Susan. Yeah, our lack of action, there's something that's triggering. Yep, absolutely. Like it is something, anytime we hesitate to make a decision, anytime we hesitate to step into action, even if it's a routine action, right? So we're working on bulk creating something and you have a schedule where you do it, say the first Monday of every month. And then all of a sudden the first Monday comes and you don't do what you are supposed to do, but you've been doing it all along. That hesitation, that lack of action means there's a trigger there and we need to address it, right? And somebody think about, sometimes our fear of success is greater than the fear of failure. So basing on just as Susan was commenting that, I wanted to share that you want to make sure that you're in action. If all of a sudden you've been doing something and it's been working and now you avoid it or you don't take that action, you want to look at it from the place of, I'm being successful. Am I afraid of the success that's coming? And sometimes that can be the trigger. That now everything you've been visualizing is becoming a reality. And you're going, oh my God, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I want, because when we succeed, what happens? There's even more accountability. There's higher expectations, not necessarily from other people, but from ourselves, right? So you want to think about that as well. That if there is a trigger, you want to look at it from the place of, if I'm succeeding, what am I afraid of in my success? And it can sometimes be, if I'm successful, will people stop liking me? Will my friends stop wanting to be my friends because I'm too successful? Right? So that's the other side of the coin you guys want to think about as well. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So lunch and learns are on pause until September. I'm reworking what those look like. Thinking of some fun ideas. I know sometimes workshops aren't fun because we're working, but looking at some twisting things around for those lunch and learns. For the neighbors, Thursday is your next bi-weekly group coaching session. The Biz 101 will be the first Wednesday in August. And those that are C-suiters, we know every Monday at 10 is open office hours for you guys as well for additional support. I think that's all on my plate. Okay, that's good. So reach out, lean into the group. We're here to support each and every one of you. And we're growing fast and furiously. So there's new people all the time to connect with. And remember, Sundays is where you get to share what you're working on, right? So post pictures of your jewelry, Susan, right? Your workshops, Maria, your journal for Sundays, right? So make sure you take advantage of those Small Biz Sunday opportunities to share everything and anything you're working on. And you're not limited to one post. So if you've got like 10 things you're working on, make 10 different posts highlighting each one. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all. I'm grateful that you're with us. And I hope you guys are staying cool. I know we are getting hit with some serious hot temperatures right now. So stay cool, stay hydrated. And I'm glad that was helpful, Maria. It's always a pleasure. I love having you on. And you too, Susan. All right. So much gratitude. We'll see you next Tuesday and have a beautiful day.